Kevin, and may this be a refer for all the sick of Klal Yisrael.
Amen.
Amen.
Okay, continuing. Okay, I found some more stuff on interrupting the Amidah. And it says, if one was praying the Amidah in the road and an animal or wagon came towards him, he should turn off the road without interrupting his praying. But in any other case, he should not move away from his place until he's finished, unless one is in the supplications, which are after the Amidah. That's tachanun, supplication, whatever the word supplication means, probably means submission. Okay, so off the road, what does that mean? It means to say there is a danger requiring action to prevent an animal or wagon from running him over. Nevertheless, since it is possible for him to guard against this by turning off the road, he is forbidden to interrupt with speech in order to tell someone else to hit the animal with a stick or to warn the wagon driver so that neither will run him over. And in any other case, if somebody in the middle of Amidah discovers a child's urine in front of him and may, in the matter set out in the Siman, move away from the urine. Okay, let's just see here. Okay, because it's not covetig to daven in front of such things. Okay, let's just do one more quickly. He should not. Okay, here's another one. When he shouldn't move away, one should castigate chazonim on Yom Kippur. Move from their place when they reach and we bend the knee, because sometimes there's no space there. And in the first paragraph of the Aleinu, in the Musaf Amidah repetition, let's just see. Okay. Yeah, that's it. So if the chazan's still in his place and he's like standing in front of a stender, he can't extend himself to bend his knee. Okay.
That's cute.
Did you get that one, Gavin?
Yeah.
And Arthur? Arthur, did you? Okay, let's leave it at that.
So castigate is obviously when you reprimand somebody severely.
Yeah.
Today you have to give your mussar in a more gentle.
And some people, and it's happened to me. Some people, and there's always people. One has to be very careful when dishing out mussar that you have your own house in order. Because I've had it where people have tried to dish it, but in a really not a nice way, and I find something with them to give them mussar. They think they think perfect. No one is, but they think they, and then I always find something with them to give them mussar back.
Yeah, listen, Kevin, most of your friends are good. The couple that you've told me over the years have been a bit mentally ill. So, you know what's nice about
you don't know who they are. Yeah.
No, I don't. But from what you've told me, they're special individuals, and you give them a lot of tolerance and time, and you understand that they've got their.
Everyone's got issues.
Yeah.
So have we.
All right.
We all have. No, that's perfect. Yeah.
Before you get started, I want to ask you a question. If you give a lot of musa and your name is Sam, is it Sam Musa?
Depends if you're Muslim. It's Musa. Damon
Sam Musa.
Yeah.
Musa, okay.
All right.
The whole Musa sounds like different religion. Yeah, you're right.
All right, guys. We're on the 60-second daf. We've dealt with a little bit of the issues. I'm not going to go through it again. We just citing a related ruling from Rava, who said if one gives a dinar of gold to a woman for safekeeping, and he says to her, be careful with it, it's a dinar of silver. Now, what I was going to say to you is that we obviously, the only time you would give a dinar of gold to somebody is if it's a wedding ring. But if you tell her it's a dinar of silver, firstly, it's not a good recommendation for a policy of dishonesty to start the marriage. That I can tell you as well. But it's got legal implications. So apart from the reference to marriage, there's an issue, because if he says to her, be careful with it, it's a dinner of silver, say she damages it with her own hands. In other words, she burns it or throws it into the sea, she pays a dinar of gold as restitution. Because he can say to her, what did you have against the coin and against me that you damaged it? In other words, one who damages the property of another with his own person must pay full compensation, regardless of whether he knew what he was damaging or not. So this case isn't comparable, guys, to that of the preceding brisa, which states that the owner of the field accepts custodianship of barley, but wheat was stored there instead, because in that case he's not liable to pay for the wheat. In this particular case, the brisa refers to damage by fire. So that's attributable to mere negligence on the part of the one who kindled it. Because the Torah views fire spreading by itself, even though it says by your hand you lit it. But with the custodian issue, here she destroyed it with her own hands. In other words, it's not something that was negligent that got out of control. So obviously she would, the only thing that is bothering me is that in that particular case, she'd have to pay back what he said it was instead of the silver. But this is a comparison, and I think Rav is just trying to say that a fire, even though it's as if you kindled it with your own hand, it's still one step removed that you pay, but you pay the more lenient amount because it basically had a force of its own. You never burnt it with your special powers. You lit an area, and that area caught fire, and the fire did it indirectly, so you pay, but it's slightly more stringent than just taking somebody's property and tossing it into the sea. So then obviously it's more stringent and you have to pay what he said it was worth. But if the woman was merely negligent, in other words, what do we mean merely negligent? She didn't watch it carefully and maybe she lost it. She took it off to Vas and lost it. Then she only pays a dinar of silver as restitution, because she can say to the owner or her husband to be, I accepted upon myself the safekeeping of silver. I did not accept upon myself the safekeeping of gold. Meaning she never agreed to watch a gold coin, because here, if it's given to her to either look after or as a wife, she's not liable to do anything other than watch it. So as long as she wasn't grossly negligent, okay, she lost it, she was negligent, but it wasn't as vindictive as throwing it in the ocean. That's what he's saying. So therefore she would only have to pay a silver dinar. Okay? Now, one thing here is so that Rava teaches that if a custodian agreed to watch one item but was given another, he's required to provide only the degree of safekeeping he or she initially accepted. So the Gemara shows that that's also taught in the brisa above. Okay, so Rav Mordechai said to Rav Ashi, you taught this law in the name of Rava. To us, however, it's obvious from the brisa. Why? Because the brisa states, if he piled up wheat for which he was given permission, but he covered the wheat with barley, or he piled up the barley for which he was given permission, but he covered the barley with wheat, should the owner of the field fail to prevent his fire from consuming the grain, Rabbi Yehuda agrees that he pays only the value of the stack of barley alone, because that's what he agreed to watch. So we can see that the owner of the field who agreed to serve as custodian can say to the owner of the grain, I only accepted upon myself the safekeeping of barley. So here too, in the case of one who gave a gold coin to a woman for safekeeping and told her that it was silver, she can say to him, I did not accept myself the safekeeping of gold. Okay. So Rav Yehuda ruled in our Mishnah that one is liable for fire damage to hidden things, and the Gemara is now going to cite an inquiry based on Rav Yehuda's opinion. Now earlier on we were dealing with Rava, now we're dealing with Rav. Now guys, who generally argues with Rav?
He's Rabbi Yehuda.
Shmuel. Generally Rav.
Shmuel.
I was going to say that as well, Gavin. I was just going to say
No, I meant Shmuel. I actually made a mistake. Sorry, I know
Okay,
Shmuel.
no, there's
because you didn't have Rav Yehuda, that's right.
Yeah,
No, I know it's not Yehuda.
Yeah, so that's not a problem. So Rav said, I heard something that was relevant to the opinion of Rav Yehuda, but I do not know what it is. So I think Rav Yehuda was before Rav and Shmuel. Otherwise, he would know. You know, if it was a student of his, he'd know. And if he was quoting somebody, it was most probably his teacher or the earlier generations. I actually need to go through a book, which my brother's got in terms of the timeline of the Tanoim and the Rishonim, etc. So, look, Shmuel said to Rav, does Abba not know what he heard? In other words, in other words, he's basically saying, Abba in this case means father, not Rav Abba. So Shmuel used this appellation in honor of Rav, who was older of the two. So it's just amazing here that you see that even though Shmuel and Rav are arguing, he refers to Rav as his Abba, as his teacher, which is quite something in terms of respect. So also Abba and Rav is a name of endearment that they give him in Chulin. So basically, he said, look, let's just discuss the issue at hand. Why you heard that according to Rabbi Yehuda, who holds one is liable for damage to a hidden object that was caused by a fire, the rabbis applied the remedy for a victim of theft in the case of hidden objects that were damaged by one's fire. So in other words, that is, just as a victim of theft can swear to what was stolen, so too one who lost hidden objects in a fire may swear to what was damaged. So in other words, generally you can't collect payment from another unless you adduce proof of the claim. Why? Because we learned the onus is on the one trying to extract damages from his fellow to bring the burden of proof. So in this case, you have different types of proof. You've got the testimony, for example, of two witnesses. You've got a case where the defendant admits he's liable. You've got a case of written contracts. So the sages have here decreed that a victim of theft, in certain circumstances, can take an oath as to the loss of sustained and collect that amount from the defendant. And there's a book in the Zikin guys called Shavuos, which means oaths. And it's in the 44th daf. So the Gemara in Shavuos teaches that the victim of a fire can likewise swear as to which hidden objects were destroyed and collect their value from the damager. Now that's an explanation by Rashi. Now it's the first time we've heard this, because what have we heard before? Is that you can't do that.
Yeah.
So here we say in certain cases, but that's only when you were lighting a fire in your neighbor's premises because you had no permission to be there. But if it started in your premises, you're off the hook for hidden items, as we learned. Now, according to Rabbi Yehuda's disputants, they agree that one is liable where he lit the fire in the victim's property and it burned objects that people would hide in such a place. In other words, guys, we said that they're threshing tools in a haystack, that sort of thing. But the Gemara bases its remarks from the view of Rav Yehuda because it wants to teach that this oath would obligate the damager to pay even for a purse hidden in a haystack, which is more unusual and a less believable claim. So we taught this issue of Rav Kahana, and we taught that issue of Rav. I'm not going to go through it again. If you want to listen to it, you can go to a previous show. I need to cover ground. So in other words, there's a degree of believability. There is an opinion that says, according to Rav, that item has to be suitable to be found in that location. Does that make sense? Rav Kahana said it doesn't have to be suitable, especially if he's hiding it there. So a victim of the theft may take an oath and collect payment, even if his claim is contested by a thief. So what we're saying is as follows, is that there is a case, and it's going to bring a separate case about thievery. I'm going to tell you what it means now. So there was a case that this advantage is also brought to give basically an advantage to the third type of victim. So Amimar inquired, did the rabbis apply the remedy for a victim of theft in the case of an informer or not? So the question is qualified. So I just want to give you an idea. A victim of theft can take an oath and collect payment, even if the claim is contested by the thief. Since some Rishonim rule that this is also true in the case whose one property sustains fire damage, like the Rashba. But many other Rishonim maintain that in a case of damage by a fire, the victim's oath is effective only where the damager is not sure whether or not the claim is correct. Okay? Not in a case where he can swear that it's not a possibility. So let's just deal with this issue of an informer. Well, guys, the leniency of why it's not given to a thief, why do you think that is?
Because the thief acts brazenly and there's no credibility with him.
Exactly. The thief, you can't believe what he says. So you have to believe rather a better member of a community, but we're going to determine what are the parameters of that. Otherwise, the person can use it to say anything. How do we know he's honest? Also, he might not actively steal, but he might lie. So the question's qualified. According to the one who says that we do not apply the law of Garmi, you do not have a question. Okay? But because in his view, we do not judge a case of informers. Okay. So what's this thing of Garmi and Garma? I'm going to explain it to you. So when do you have a question? According to the one who says we do apply the law of Garmi, since this opinion holds that the court would prosecute the informer and assign damages where they are known, one may ask, did the rabbis apply the remedy for the victim of theft to a victim of an informer as well, so that he may swear as to the loss he sustained and collect that amount from the informer, or did they not inform him of the recourse? All right, so let me just explain to you what Garmi is and Garma. I don't know if you guys know the difference.
Yeah.
Okay, so firstly, an informer is Moser or Masur.
Moiser.
Moiser, yeah. Today,
Moiser.
I think it's called Moiser, but they've got two different spellings in Aramaic. They've got Masur and Moiser. So I don't know if the one is a specific type of informer or not. I'm not 100% sure. But Kevin, basically an informer is not direct damage. Do you remember there was an issue of Rav Oshia and Rav Chia? Remember we learned this in early on, in like the 5th daf. Remember they had a list of damages. Right? And there were some damages that were not discernible. So for example, if I take your wine and I let a non-Jewish person touch it, you can't use it for Kiddush. Now, I haven't affected the quality of the wine, so it's a non-discernible difference. It's a spiritual difference. And therefore, in certain cases, one of the opinions are you wouldn't pay for the damage there. Why wouldn't you pay for the damage there, Arthur?
Why wouldn't you pay for the damage there? I actually don't know why you wouldn't pay for the damages there.
Okay, so there's a difference between discernible damage and non-discernible. So discernible damage is if I left your wine in the sun and it became vinegar and it lost its value. Anybody that drank it could discern it lost its value. But if I say to you that the Kohen could no longer use the produce because the truma wasn't separated, or something had truma, spiritual impurity, and you couldn't drink it, or a non-Jew touched your wine at which you would do kiddush, and then you couldn't drink it, you haven't affected the value of the wine in terms of discernible differences. It's a spiritual concept.
The value or the quality, or both?
No, well, the quality would stay the same. The wine could still be a Chardonnay or Sauvignon Blanc.
It's still, it doesn't change. If you affect the quality, then it affects the value, yes.
Correct. It doesn't suddenly become vinegar. It's true that the value has dropped because it's no longer useful to a Jew, but it's not a quantifiable, objectively measurable loss of quality, like wine turning into vinegar. So, Arthur, an informer is different to a thief. Because what happens with an informer is he informs the non-Jewish pagan authorities that a Jew, maybe he says that the Jew, this particular Jew, hasn't paid his taxes to the Romans. He's tax evading. So the Romans go and take all his stuff. Now, he never stole the stuff. He made sure his stuff was stolen indirectly. And therefore, it's known as indirect theft. It's not direct theft. Okay? Are you with me so far? So, there's an issue of grama and garmi. So, grama is indirect causative damage, and garmi is direct causative damage. So, a thief would directly steal an item. That's direct causative damage. And grama is indirect causative damage. Okay? Which means it means an informer tells the Roman authorities and he collects the taxes and the sheriff of the Roman court attaches everything from the Jew and he takes it from him. But did the Jew steal from the other Jew? No. He caused a particular event to make him lose his stuff, but he never stole it directly. So it's treated as an indirect theft. So the Gemara is asking, is a garmi the same as a grama? Is direct the same as indirect? Does that make sense? Now, there are those that also hold that damage by wording is not tangible damage because it's words. You never hit the person. There are other opinions that say it is, because in the case of Adam Zimmerman, a person can put another person to death. So that issue we'll discuss another time about, because this was the issue, is that for blasphemy, there was a discussion in Sanhedrin as to how does the death penalty work, in fact, because wording is not seen as an action as such. It's not like idol worship. It's wording. So is it considered at the same level, and why does it get a death penalty? I don't know if Gavin joined us for Sanhedrin at that point or he didn't. I'm not sure. But before we complicate it as to whether wording is effectual or not, let's just talk about direct theft and indirect theft. So why is an informer considered indirect theft?
Because he didn't actually steal. He got the person he ratted on him basically, and that person then took away his stuff.
Correct. He ratted on him and he caused the sheriff of the court to confiscate his goods. Okay. So in that case, what we're saying here is we don't know if we apply the remedy for the victim of theft in the same case as an informer or not. In other words, what context are we talking in here? I come to court, there were witnesses that saw this thief in my place. And this thief said he just stole a toaster. They caught him with the toaster. And I said, well, that's not true because I've got an invoice from the jewelers and I bought a diamond necklace. And that is missing. Okay? Now, the thief isn't to be believed, but if I've got the invoice for the necklace and the necklace isn't there, Kevin and Arthur, I have a bit of a problem with this because the person can go to town a bit. So I don't know exactly how this works. I'm just telling you the Gemara. I think the person whose testimony would be taken into account, it's a bit of a problem without evidence, because he could, even if he's got an invoice for it, he could have held the jewelry and said the thief took it. I don't know what to do here. But I'm just saying, according to the Gemara, we accept his testimony. Okay? For a thief, because a thief has already broken the law. And we're saying, do we accept a testimony as far as the fire is concerned? And it seems to be yes, if you've done damage in the premises of another because you had no right to be there. It's different if you did damage in your own premises. Probably I must check, wonder what Rav Yehuda says, because you're not as negligent. You have to pay for it. But do you have to pay if there's no evidence or hidden items? And obviously Rav Yehuda says yes. So we would assume that he's saying in this case that he would accept the oath of the damaged party. So what we're saying is we see this for theft, we see this for the igniter of the fire, but what about for an informer who did the indirect damage? Is it a case where we go before the Beis Din and we say to the informer, they confiscated everything from our place, and this is the list of items. Do we in fact accept his oath on that case for indirect damage? Okay, so that's what's being asked. Does it make sense, guys?
Yeah.
Okay, so also there's a case about indirect being a delayed reaction. It's not just a case of indirect. It could be a delayed sort of reaction. Let me give you another case, a fire, that if you put water where the fire will eventually reach in Shabbos and the fire will extinguish, you can do that, even though you directly set the water out because you didn't directly throw it on the fire. So there's a delayed reaction. So the Gemara says, as far as that's concerned, do they allow him, in the case of informing, that leniency, or do they accept the victim testimony? And the answer, the Gemara says, let the question remain unresolved. We don't have an answer for that. Okay. So let's just see how we're doing for time. We still got time. Okay. So the Gemara taught that one whose hidden objects were damaged by a fire can swear as to their value and collect that amount. The following incident involves the application of this rule. Okay, and this is brought by Rashba. There was a certain man who kicked the money box of his fellow and thereby cast it into the river. Its owner came before the court and claimed, I have such and such in it. Rav Ashi sat and pondered the matter. In a case like this, what is the law? Can the victim take an oath as to the amount he lost and then collect that amount? Okay, in other words, if the victim could have proven how much he lost, like, for example, with a testimony of witnesses, there'd be no doubt that the damager would have to pay the full compensation. Because we learned about one who damages the property of another with his own person, where he kicked the box into the river, because like we learned this with the case of the woman with the gold dinner. You must pay for everything that was lost, even if you didn't know what it is. But in this case, the victim did not have witnesses. And so he sought to establish the extent of his loss by means of an oath. So Rav Ashi wasn't sure whether his oath would be acceptable. So the basis of Rav Ashi's doubt is as follows. So Ravina said to Rav Achi, the son of Rava, or as others report, Rav Acha, the son of Rava, said to Rav Ashi, is this not evident in our Mishnah? In other words, in 61b, the one we're doing at the moment. Well, the one we've just done, and then now the 62 daf is going on that Mishnah. Because we learned in our particular Mishnah, but the sages agree with Rav Yehuda that the one who sets fire to a large tower, that he pays for everything inside it. Because it is the way of people to put things in houses and towers. Well, when we're talking about a tower like storage granule tower. So the decree basically allowing the victim to collect payments on the basis of an oath applies in this case. Because the Mishnah implies that the only case in which the sages impose liability for damage to an hidden object is when it's firstly set in your according to the one opinion in your neighbor's yard, and secondly that it's normal to keep objects in that particular place, like a house, not in a haystack. So if there's a rabbinical decree that one who lost a hidden object can take an oath and collect payment, that decree must apply at least here, because otherwise where would it apply? So the one who adduces the proof expressed astonishment at Rav Ashi's query. Okay, so what do we mean? Is that would it apply in a similar case to one who damaged coins that were in a money box? So basically, the proof is shown to be relevant. Why? Because Rav Achi Rav Ashi or Rav Achai, remember there's a dispute as to who said this, said to Ravina, if the victim were claiming that there were coins in the box, it would be indeed so. Why? Because obviously it's normal to keep coins in a box. So he could say that this was the value of the coins, and the coins, and we'd have to believe them, right? But here we're dealing with a different case. We're dealing with a case where there was a jewel in the box. And what is the law? Do people put jewels in a money box or not? In other words, it's a very odd item to stick in a money box. So we've established that you don't mind taking an oath in terms of the amount of coins, because that's normal to keep there. But an item of jewelry, it's not so clear that you would pay for that, because people don't generally put it in the money box. So the Gemara concludes, let the question stand unresolved. Okay? Now, how many minutes have we got left, guys? 7 minutes. Okay, we can cover a little bit of ground. So there's a similar query. Rav Yirmah said to Rav Ashi, if one claims that he had a silver goblet in a tower that was burnt down, what's the law? May he swear that he lost a silver goblet and collect payment for it? And Rav Ashi replied to him, we investigate the matter. If he's a wealthy person who has the financial capacity to own a silver goblet, or else he's a trustworthy man, in other words, he's known in the community as being impeccably honest, who people would deposit valuable articles for safekeeping. In other words, that was his job for storage. He can swear that a silver goblet was lost in the fire and collect payment for it. But if that is not the case, it's not within his power to claim such an expensive item. So now the Gemara digresses to explain the distinction between two types of thieves. Rav Ada, the son of Rav Avia, said to Rav Ashi, what is the difference between a Ghazlad and a Khamsan? Okay, so in Sanhedrin, in the 25th class, there's a Ghazlad and a Khamsan. They're separate categories. Guys, in the Chumash, it's the same. It's only in Sanhedrin that it makes a distinction, because Khamsan takes the object without the owner's permission, but pays him for it. Ghazlad does not even pay. So let me give you an example. I want a piece of property from you, okay? And I want to build a shopping center. So I want to buy it from you. So we're not talking about a case where you stretch a guy on a rack with your heavies and you pay him below market-related price, because that's theft. Do you agree? You would never agree to sell it for that. So you say to him, I'm prepared to pay you. Yeah, have you with me? You look distracted.
I thought I saw it in six. It's fine.
Okay.
I'm focused.
So in other words, what I'm saying is we're not talking about a case where you stretch a guy on a rack and the house is worth 2 million and he gives you 20 rand. That's clearly theft. He might have agreed, but he agreed under duress of at the pain of death. We're talking about a guy where you stretched on a rack, but you gave him full value for his item. Like you want to build a 300 million rand shopping center, and he's got a house in the way that's worth 800,000 rand, like a shack. And he won't sell it because he wants to hold out for money. So you get your heavies to stretch him out in his rack, and just before his spine pops, he decides, okay, I'm a willing participant. I'll take the 800 grand. So that's a Khamsan. But it's still a thief, because a person wouldn't want to do it under ordinary circumstances. So Rav Ada, the son of Rav Avia, said to Rav Ashi, what's the difference between a Ghazlad and a Khamsan? Rav Ashi said to him, a Khamsan gives money for the object he's taken, while a Ghazlad does not give money. So the distinction is challenged. Rav Ada responded to Rav Ashi, if he gives money for the object, would you call him a Khamsan? But Rav Huna said, if they hung someone up or otherwise subjected them to distress until he relented and he sold them what they demanded, his sale is a valid sale. Thus we can see that even a full sale is valid and not a form of thievery. Okay? Because he got paid. Rav Ashi replies, this is not a difficulty. That refers to a case where the victim said, I'm willing to sell the object, while this refers to a case where he did not say, I'm willing to sell the object. Guys, we're going to end then at this point. I don't know what that quite means, because believe me, under certain torture, anybody would be saying, I'm a willing guy. I don't actually understand this part. I don't
Damon, isn't a Khamsan somebody who doesn't spend money, his own money or something in his wallet? Isn't it a Khamsan? Or is that a different word? It sounds as a similar word.
I don't
It's
know.
to do with money.
What's the Hebrew word for mazer? The Yiddish word for mazer?
Schnorrer.
Schnorrer, yeah.
No.
Yeah, no, here we're talking about, but I would wonder what the Gemara would say to when clearly he doesn't get the market-related value for that thing that he was forced to sell. Do they know he was under duress and count that as a valid sale? Or they only count a valid sale when in fact he got the market-related rate? So it's difficult to understand what the ramifications are. All right, guys, we'll end off at this point. And
Shkach.